Right, hey guys, how we doing? Back another video from Annie News. We got more content from MUSHOKU Tensei. We're going to see what was missed out of the wedding. I'm loving it so much, but I have a sneaky feeling there's some bad stuff's going to happen real soon. I feel like it's building up to some of all this nice stuff. Rui's having a nice life. Him and Sophie are cool. He's got friends, but and then disaster's going to happen. Something bad's going to happen. But let's just see what was left, cut out, or potentially added to this episode.
Rudeus and Sylphie's wedding wasn't so much about Rudeus and Sylphie, but was instead an opportunity to highlight all the people around them. It's hard to appreciate a cast as big as this, but when they're all in the same room and even interacting with each other, you best believe we're gonna get some interesting conversations out of them. That's what a majority of the cut content for this episode is, and
Cool.
as you'll soon see, it does well to develop a lot of the side characters. So, whether it be Luke hitting on Nanahoshi or Ariel presenting her gifts,
Oof.
the wedding reception was a rare opportunity to see more from everyone else. Scenes that unfortunately didn't make it into the anime, but ones I think you'll definitely appreciate. Episode 38, Wedding Reception, covering chapters 5 to 7 from volume 10 of the light novel. The first and most important thing that needs to be mentioned is exactly what it is Rudy decided to do with the secret room down in the basement.
Oh, okay.
Last episode I mentioned it wasn't specified, but after reading a little more, it was confirmed to be a shrine. A private room home to a secret altar, the contents of which were the idols Rudy went and prayed to every day. It was kept behind a door Rudy ensured was soundproof, so no matter how many times he went in or out, no one would suspect there was something else down in the basement.
Interesting.
Now,
Okay.
it was a week after all these renovations had been completed that Rudy and Sylphie were able to spend some quality time together. Normally, Sylphie wouldn't have had time to do any of this, but after getting a week off thanks to Ariel, the two would spend all week together preparing for their upcoming reception.
Lovely.
It was a week Rudy had hoped would be filled with all sorts of romantic endeavors, but was instead non-stop work as arrangement after arrangement had to be made.
I wanted to get banging and all the time, and then it's just like, oh no, actually, you know what? Life's got more to come with it than just that.
Some of the concerns that weren't mentioned in the anime was the way certain people would react when seeing others, the seating order since there was a mix of people from royalty to adventurers,
God,
then
yeah,
of course
wow.
the possibility that no one would even show up. This last one stemmed from a fear he gained from an anime, and it was a reference to this scene from Kyojin no Hoshi.
Oh.
Basically, the main character put all this work into setting up a Christmas party, but when the time came, no one he invited showed up.
Oh no, that's so sad. That's such a big table as well. Jesus. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So enough room for 10 people. You could potentially have 12, but there's 10 chairs there. Oh my god.
It's not really all that important, but a reference like this once again highlights that generational gap between him and Nanahoshi. We're shown yet again through media the type of content Rudy grew up with. As for the other concerns, consideration needed to be given for how certain people may interact with each other. Like, with Linnea and Persenna having bad blood with Ariel, who knows how they would react when they see her again? And knowing exactly how Ariel was, it's likely she would use this reception as her own personal networking event. There was no way she would miss an opportunity to make acquaintance with the other special students. Seating was a whole nother issue on its own because when your guests are royalty, nobility, adventurers, and slaves, you couldn't possibly seat them in order of status properly, especially if you wanted to keep groups like Xanaba and Julie together. So, rather than make the mistake of seating someone with lower status ahead of someone with higher status, Rudy instead just opted for no seating at all.
Right.
It was the best way to
Okay.
circumvent the whole issue with status.
Very clever. That's cool. Okay, that's why everyone's standing around. Alright.
It's also the reason he instructed everyone to come in uniform, since while there was definitely a gap in status, it wouldn't be as apparent if everyone came dressed the same.
Makes sense. It all makes sense. I love this as an explanation for everything.
They had even went and bought one for Julie. This is just one of the many things they left out on Julie's end, and as you'll soon see, they're all brief scenes of her acting cute. Switching back to the preparations first though, although the anime doesn't make it visible with Rudy's design, shopping for a new robe was actually quite essential for him. This is the same robe he's been traveling with ever since the Demon Continent, and while Sylphie herself didn't care that it was in tatters, the people Rudy associated with likely did. So it wasn't so much Sylphie wanting to make Rudy look less disheveled, but rather a necessity for if he wanted to be part of Ariel's camp now. Sylphie would maintain her Fitz identity as she walked into the store, and this would be the reason why the shop owner had recognized her. It was a place Ariel and Luke came to as regulars, and that made it clear it was a shop that catered to Asuran royalty. Luke actually came here more than Ariel did, and every time he did, there would always be a different girl with him. Now, there was actually purpose behind each of these robes, and both catered.
I thought this middle one was very strange. But yeah, all right.
To the elemental specialties Rudy had mentioned earlier. For water, this was made from the hide of rainforest lizard, and that was a material that was supposed to be highly water resistant. For earth, this was made from the hide of Begarit's great earthworms, and they were supposedly durable in sandstorms. The reason Rudy decided not to take either, though, was because his experience with rainforest lizards proved they weren't that resistant to water at all, and the camo of the desert one just seemed out of place here. Had it been something a bit more snow-like, then this second robe was a purchase he would have made for sure. As for the last, this was a more subdued design typically chosen by older people. It was made from the hide of the D-rank lucky rat, and this was a superior species to that of the mucky rat. Only once had Rudy ever come across either of these monsters, but it was when he did that he was terrified of them. Something about a horde of 20-inch rats just didn't sit well with him, especially when the lucky rat was even bigger than that. Luckily, their skin boasted resistance to acid and poison, so in general the robe was quite the useful one.
Cool.
You just had to look past the price tag making it equivalent to a house in the demon continent, then after that the robe really was rather nice for him. So, the measurements for that would then be taken, and the robe handcrafted and delivered within the next 3 days. The two would then proceed with the rest of their shopping, and it's here they would have that conversation about Rudy not thinking he was good enough for her. Of course, Sylphie reassured him that he was, but if there was anything he could improve on, it would be his confidence. You see, Sylphie believed Rudy could be a bit too submissive sometimes, so in an effort to make him less, she straight up told him to be more assertive.
Oh gosh.
It's an important line that I think highlights how it is Sylphie sees Rudy right now. Though she always pictures him on this unattainable pedestal, he's not a perfect entity she's afraid to criticize. No. He's simply the person she wants to support the most in life.
Love that.
This would then bring us to the bath scene, and while there was a whole section on Rudy teaching Sylphie how to bathe properly, there wasn't anything too important in between all that. It would simply remind them of how it was the first time they met, and the two would reminisce on how they ended up together. Rudy would also show his appreciation for bathing in general, since while he never really got around to it in his past life, he found doing it now was actually quite relaxing.
It does seem, they both seem very chilled and relaxed there, like, oh.
Sylphie would also take the occasional peek at Rudy, and the rest was Rudy practicing self-control. Now, it's when we get to the wedding reception a few days after that there were a whole bunch of interactions cut which developed the side characters. These brief yet interesting moments which I found added charm to a lot of them. The first came from Linnea and Persenna, and it was through their early arrival 2 hours before the event was even scheduled to start. You see, for them this was a display of loyalty. As it is in beast folk culture, when attending a wedding it was customary to go hunting the morning of, make a kill, then offer said kill as the gift.
Oh, alright, that's fun. Aw.
The earlier one went hunting, made their kill, then returned with it, were all measures of respect for the person who invited them. So, for Linnea and Persenna to show up 2 hours early, all with this massive boar they had hunted just this morning, well, that was a tremendous display of their loyalty.
Love that.
It was them showing Rudy how much they truly respected him.
That's cool.
It was
he's got such a nice team around him. I feel like it's gonna get taken away.
an hour later that Xanaba and Julie would arrive, then 30 minutes after Ariel and her attendants. They were introduced as Elamoy Bluewolf and Cleanne Elrond, and the two were surprisingly close to Sylphie despite us never having seen them before. In fact, when everyone was conversing later on in the party, Rudy could actually spot Elamoy in tears as she spoke about how happy she was for Sylphie. It was clear she and Cleanne really cared for her, especially when you remember the three probably fought numerous battles together. Rudy would then make a joke about people having last names combining a color and an animal, then Ariel would step forward and present the gifts she'd brought. The first was an aphrodisiac Rudy was more than familiar with, then the next was a wooden dildo for in case Rudy couldn't do his job anymore.
What? Oh, okay.
They were both presented in the most serious manner you could imagine, and that was because in Asura stuff like that was completely normal. For a nation as promiscuous as theirs, it makes sense for gifts like these to be part of their culture. It's actually something that I briefly talked about back in my episode 0 cut content from almost a year ago.
Crazy.
In any case, Rudy would guide Ariel into the
It's just the way you just casually just said it. Yeah, and a wooden dildo. In case you couldn't do it. I'm so immature. If I can't not say the word dildo and laugh, especially wooden dildo.
An area where a bit of tension would build between her and the Beast Girls. Obviously, neither were gonna start a fight, but Rudy made sure by giving Linnea and Persenna the look. He would even glance at Zanaba in order to tell him to keep those two in check, but Zanaba instead took that as an invitation to introduce himself. A display of refined social skills which reminded Rudy that he too was royalty. Of course, he didn't go very long without praising Rudy, but that was par for the course when it came to any conversation with him. It was Cliff, Elena Lise, and Nanahoshi who showed up last, and to Rudy's surprise, they had all arrived together. Nanahoshi didn't actually walk with them, but she was hovering outside the gates looking all flustered.
Right.
Naturally, Elena Lise urged her to come with them, and that was how the three ended up showing up together. It was when Cliff heard that Nanahoshi was Silent 7th Star that he would immediately go and introduce himself.
Wait, you're kind of a big deal.
For some reason, he wanted to know whether she had heard of him. Probably to inflate his ego, and that's exactly what had happened when she responded saying she did. Nanahoshi would then go and speak to Rudy, and she would basically confirm that he was serious. If there was any doubt in him not wanting to go back to Earth, then it was all pretty much gone with this marriage here. Elena Lise and Cliff would then head straight into the common area, and the two wouldn't hesitate to converse with anyone. Despite Elena Lise's status being just above that of Julie's, it was clear that such a thing meant nothing to her. She had no problem interacting with anyone whatever way she wanted, leading Rudy to think perhaps the notion of rank meant nothing to elves. The same couldn't be said for Cliff though, since while I'm sure he was aware of what status meant to everyone, he had no problem stifling the mood preaching about how great he was. Of course, Selena Lise made it a bit more bearable, but just like Zanaba and his praise for Rudy, this too was just part of who he was as a person, even if it did come off as direct rather than endearing. Nanahoshi was a lot more social than you may think, since while the anime showed her tucked away in the corner, she did make conversation whenever someone approached her.
Okay.
It wasn't anything deep or important, but she wasn't just this wallflower actively avoiding everyone. Especially later on when Julie and Bodygotti join her.
Oh, okay, cool.
Since we're on the topic of Bodygotti now, his arrival was standard behavior for pretty much every Demon King. As it is according to their culture, whenever a Demon King attends a party, they must always wait for the perfect moment to astonish and disrupt. It was a silly custom created by Kashirika herself, one she made up completely on a whim, yet one Bodygotti still followed despite knowing it was ridiculous. In the novel, he had come through the back door like some kind of robber, while in the manga, he straight up came through the chimney like he was Santa Claus.
Oh my god, I love it. That's so funny. It's random. Hi guys, I am here.
Obviously, that's a little ridiculous for someone his size,
Yeah,
but
it's huge.
it's definitely hilarious to see him crawling out like this. Now, it was after the speech and a little more socialization that a few minor interactions were omitted from the after party. Julie would sit next to Nanahoshi and eat chips without saying anything, then Bodygotti would come up after and join both of them. Whether it was because Bodygotti was intimidating or she just wanted to protect her chips, out of pure instinct Nanahoshi would pull out one of her rings. She was clearly in a panic as this massive figure approached her. Bodygotti wasn't going to do anything, but he did mess up her hair as he casually played around with both of them.
Aw.
This would spur Nanahoshi to leave and go talk to Rudy, which in turn brings us to that important question Sylphie had asked to her. An interesting comment I'm surprised they didn't show along with it was another line from Sylphie stating that she knew Nanahoshi wasn't from here. The reason I say I'm surprised is because the inclusion of it adds a whole nother layer to this. You see, if Sylphie knows Nanahoshi's from a different world, then her initial
She must know that Rudy is.
question means she suspects Rudy might be from one too. This is the first time such a topic has ever been mentioned by someone close to him, so it leads to a perspective of Rudy that we haven't yet seen before. One in which we get to see how he treats the idea of other people knowing he's, well, different. So, after Sylphie had asked the question of what she meant, Nanahoshi would glance at Rudy as if to ask what to do. She had left it entirely up to him since for her such a detail wasn't hers to tell. Rudy's response may not be what you expect since for him he honestly didn't care what Nanahoshi said. Whether she told the truth or just brushed it off, the fact he was isekai'd wasn't something he was trying to hide from Sylphie. He thought the topic would be a bit difficult to explain, but her knowing it wasn't that big of a deal for him. If anything, it's more important for us as the viewer since the reveal of such knowledge suggests she already suspects it. At the very least, it presents the concept of being isekai'd as common knowledge. Well, as it would seem for Nanahoshi's case anyway. This brings us now to Elena Lise and Sylphie, which was done surprisingly well considering the amount of information packed within. The majority of it was captured almost perfectly, but for a bit more context you should definitely check out the manga. An entire side chapter was dedicated to explaining it.
Oh.
Well, at least hinting towards it, since the only hint before that was the one from episode 4. So, it was in chapter 70.
Isn't she she's a grandma, isn't she?
9.5 that Alamoy had gone and done an investigation on Rudy and Alina Lise. It was from this that Sylphie first heard she was part of the Black Wolf Fang, and it was that revelation which made her remember a conversation she once had. The conversation where her father first spoke about her grandmother. So, what the anime and novel portrayed as Sylphie simply telling Alina Lise was instead shown as a flashback between her and Laws.
Oh.
What makes this so interesting is that, in addition to all the stuff about how Alina Lise was a troublemaker, we also get to see how it was Laws found out about her through Paul. Before that, he didn't like Alina Lise too much either, but after hearing how she was while she traveled with Paul, such amazing stories made him think that perhaps she changed a bit.
God damn, this is quite an interesting thing to leave left out, isn't it? Like, huh.
The person Paul described was far different from the outcast everyone else did. It was a different perspective that made Laws think perhaps her and Sylphie should meet one day. It was this conversation which stuck with Sylphie over the years, and that would be the reason why she was even aware of Alina Lise. So, the reception would take a bit of a somber turn here, but with Bodygotti constantly laughing in the background, he alone would keep the mood light. Not once did he come up to congratulate Rudy or Sylphie, but his lively presence was something Rudy was grateful for. Now, it was once people started to leave that the only other notable interaction was between Nanahoshi and Luke. As you'd expect from someone as womanizing as him, it was only natural for him to try and hit on Nanahoshi at least once that day.
Makes sense.
He was feigning interest in topics he thought she might be passionate about, but no attempt at conversation could dissuade his annoying presence. So, the more Luke spoke, the more Nanahoshi got annoyed, and eventually she would have to run to the bathroom just to escape him. That's when she figured it was time to leave, and the rest was pretty much as we saw. This brings us now to the duel between Luke and Rudy, but that's something that I feel is worthy of its own video.
Oh.
It's one I actually plan to release tomorrow, so be sure to keep your eye out for that one.
Alright.
Now, don't forget the big giveaway stream is happening this Sunday, so if you want a chance of winning this amazing ancient Magus Bride
Wow, so there's so much left out from the fight.
statue, then be sure to come hang out
its
since you'll
own
actually
video.
have to compete for it.
That's so
There will
cool.
be several games testing your anime knowledge. If you just want to pre-order one for yourself though, then be
That
sure to
does look
sign up for the
cool. I've
wish
never
list
watched
using
it,
my
just
link
make it
down in the
spread myself,
description.
but, like,
Figurama's been a very amazing partner, and we're actually planning something super special in the future. So, if you want to show them love for helping to support me in the giveaways I do, then even just registering your email with them is super helpful. Just click the link, then join the wish list.
Cool.
But anyway, as always, thank you so much for watching, and if you enjoyed this type of anime content, then you already know what to do. So, until next time, ciao.
Very cool. Interesting. Interesting to see what happens in the fight then. Oh, but wow, that whole like backstory with Sylphie and the grandmama and Paul and that. I think that's really interesting. It's really interesting that they left that out. I suppose it's not really necessarily needed, but still, it would have been cool to see. But anyway, thank you to my patrons. If you want to have your name at the end of every video and want to be able to watch patron-only reactions, such as the original Dragon Ball series, links in the description to the Patreon page. $1 a month is all I ask per child. Greatly appreciate it. Thank you for that. Thank you all for watching. What do you guys think of that? Guys, think of this? Click like, subscribe if you haven't already. Leave comments down below. Let me know what I should watch and discuss in future videos. And I'll see you guys all next time.